Welcome back, guys. Baby got stacks.
We have a
We're
little
getting
different thing
we're
going
getting
on today.
spooky up in here.
Getting spooky, getting knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's October 1st, first
Holy
day of
shit.
this spooky month.
Ooh,
Pretty excited.
pretty excited.
We thought instead of doing like a true crime, we would do more of historical fiction.
This isn't fiction.
More historical nonfiction.
There it is.
There we go. Uh,
Yeah,
I,
the only nonfiction we really do is true crime. Not something we do purposefully. It's just happened.
it's just something that intrigues us that we
Yeah.
like to do in our free time anyways, and so we
Mhm.
wanted to do something a little different. Everyone kind of knows the Salem witch trials from the Crucible that we
Yeah.
read in well, I read it in high
You know
school.
that really exciting, upbeat, feel good story, The Crucible.
Yeah. That one. So everyone knows, I mean, Sarah Good, the Proctors, you know,
Tuba, yeah.
yeah, the good Sarah Goodman, Bridget Bishop. Those names kind of ring a bell when you think of
Hmm.
Salem witches or witches in general,
Yeah.
if you're talking like back in our history. This book I liked because it brings more of a meaningful of why possibly they were tried as witches or why witches were prominent in that time of
Yeah.
our history.
This is
Um,
called The Devil in the Shape of a Woman,
yes.
Witchcraft in Colonial New England by Carol F. Karlsen. This was originally written in the 80s, but
Hmm.
I mean, nothing seems like not correct anymore, or not like appropriate, or I wouldn't have been able to tell.
Yeah. Yeah, and there was an addition that was added in 98
Hmm.
to the back of the book because I mean, Carol did a lot of research
Oh, yeah.
when writing this book, and especially getting like being someone that is really into genealogy.
Hmm.
When you get back to the early 1600s, the records are like non-existent. And if they are existent, it is really hard to decipher them and figure
Yeah.
out what it was trying to
They're
convey.
all jumbled in there and
Yeah.
everything's mixed up and
So
fuzzy and
I give kudos to Carol because it is hard. And there is a part in the afterword with the paperback edition that Carol does say, I did not get it all right. Alice Parker turns out was not that. Like there were some things that
yeah,
actually
some
weren't.
amendments.
Yes,
But that's
because
kind of just going forward in time of like more
yeah,
research done.
yeah, because especially in like ancestry.com, that is all done by people working on other things, trying to get like stuff
Yeah.
uploaded. And so, I mean, every single day there's new information that is added to genealogy websites from people trying to decipher old stuff.
Yeah, their
And
own studies.
yeah, and so obviously 10 years later, there's going to be new information
Yeah.
of new records that have been found or uncovered or deciphered. And so I like that they kind of put that at the end that,
Yeah, it was a nice little
yeah,
note.
I liked
Um,
it.
this falls under women's studies
Yeah.
and specifically American history. We're talking about the
Hmm.
US colonial times, obviously. So this kind of touches on what might be happening out in Europe with their own dealings with witches, but
Hmm.
obviously very American focused of how people from England came over and how that kind of created the whole different kind of community of how witches will come up. And
Yeah.
I really liked this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5.
I give it a 4 out of 5. I had nothing wrong with the book. I liked the book. It just it was more of some of it became, I don't want to say repetitive, but there was like some
I would say
instances,
repetitive. There were some
there was just some,
overused points.
like when it got in like really focused with the numbers and the ratios. For me, numbers are not my friend. I don't like
That's
them.
fair.
I just kind of
Give me
skimmed
a pie chart.
there were, yeah, exactly. There were some number wise, like the chapter about the demographic basis of witchcraft,
Mm-hmm.
about the between the sexes, the women versus the men, and how many women were accused versus men. And I liked that comparison. I liked the
Right.
comparisons. I just didn't really care for when they got into the really nitty gritty of the
Specific
ratios. And
actual numbers. Yeah.
yeah, I kind of skimmed through it and I was
Yeah.
like, nah.
It
But
reads as an academic journal.
yeah.
In her added notes later on, she
Hmm.
mentions how it's used in classrooms, how it's required reading,
Yeah.
how other academics have made their own responses to this.
Hmm.
And there were some things where I was left wondering more, like during the demographics of, like, when you think of a witch, like most people think of an older woman, but actually it was probably more late 30s to the
Hmm.
50s
Hmm.
age range that were accused. But I did want to know what the average lifespan was, because like how many
Mm,
women actually did make it to the 60 plus.
probably not very much.
Then that's what I'm thinking. So like
Probably not.
then obviously there wouldn't be that many women
That's valid.
accused in that age range if that age range is like 3 girls. Like, you know what I mean?
That's valid. I think my favorite chapter was chapter 3, which was the economic basis of witchcraft, because it breaks it down and it kind of looks at some of the witches that were accused of witchcraft before the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I liked that part of it. I liked
Hmm.
learning about, like, yeah, there's names. I mean, you can name
Hmm.
people and they're just names, but when you actually look at their history and their background and you kind of make them feel more real and more
Real,
alive.
yeah.
Like these were actual people in the
Hmm.
1600s that were dealing with this. I
Hmm.
liked that aspect of it, and I
I
think it was
like the
written
individual
really well.
stories. And she brought in a lot of individual stories and their circumstance. And she
Yes.
managed to separate like witch accusations, kind of everyday, normal
Yeah.
life versus the Salem outbreak.
Yeah.
And it's called like an outbreak.
Yeah. And I really, because like we said before, everyone kind of knows in the big picture the
Yeah.
Salem witchcraft trials and kind of what happened, because like I said, we learned about that in school.
Yeah.
But I liked this book because it talks about before that and what was
Hmm.
happening in other places that weren't very well known. And
Yeah.
like these names I had never heard of
I'd
before,
never heard of any of these women.
but I think
And I
should
like
be
that,
talked about.
yeah, that she kind of mentioned as well in her afterward years later is like, I managed to find these women and like make their name known and their stories known so they're not just lost to time,
Yeah,
which is really cool.
which I loved. There
Yeah.
were some parts of this book, so obviously I kind of knew some of the basis of why women were accused of witchcraft, but some of the things I was baffled.
I tabbed some things where I was like, uh, uh, yeah. It's
Yes, I did. And I also liked too that it kind of broke up each chapter. So like one chapter was about male versus female and how
Mhm.
more female were accused of witchcraft versus males.
Mhm.
And then it brought on the social status. A lot of times, if you were poor, you would be tried as a witch, or if
Mhm.
like I mean, were some instances where wealthier women were accused, and it kind of blew everyone's mind of why they were being
Yeah.
accused, and they weren't getting prosecuted like the poor people were.
Mhm.
or if they were single versus married or widowed. That's a
It
huge
really broke down like
factor.
who is being accused of a witch and
Yeah.
why these specific women.
Yes. Yeah. There were so a witch was thought to interfere with nature in other ways as well. She was commonly accused of obstructing reproductive processes. So if she had a miscarriage, if the child came out deformed, in their own ways deformed. I mean, if there was
Yeah.
anything wrong with the baby, witch. I was like, what?
Witch. I put a note in here. It's like women could literally do nothing right. Like you're too good at what you do. Like you spin
Witch.
more yarn than anyone ever has. Witch.
Witch.
You
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
neighbor's cows die.
Witch.
Witch.
Your neighbor's beer spoils in the brewery. Witch.
Witch.
Yeah, I just she was believed capable of causing cows to stop giving milk and hens to lay fewer eggs. Cloth and clothing production were frequently hindered by witchcraft, as woman found when she tried again and again to spin but could make no work of it. I think maybe your spindle's broken. I don't think
I
there's
think you fucked
witchcraft
that up.
afoot. I don't think
Yeah.
there's witchcraft afoot at all.
And I liked how it brought up how women, especially at that time, were to be at the home and take care of the family and like take care of
Yeah.
like being kind of nurse in a way of like, okay, you're gonna help them through fevers and ailments and different pains. Oh, but you fix that fever? Witch.
You didn't
It's
fix
like
the
they could
fever?
do
Witch, because you hated
nothing
her.
right. It's like we
Yeah.
want you to help this kid. Oh, you help that kid. Witch.
It just, yeah, they couldn't win. Or a big one that I feel like we saw prominently in this book was that if a woman was single and there were no males in the family and she was gifted large portions of money or land or anything that was deemed expensive or
Valuable.
witch.
Witch.
I'm sorry, what?
Because no man in the right mind was gonna leave that much to a woman.
Also,
You
also,
bewitched him.
I didn't tab it, but I know exactly what page it's on because I was baffled and I read it out loud to my boyfriend this morning. It was said that so in Essex County, I think this was the late 1600s, men were still regularly prosecuted and punished for sexual charges. So this is about like sex in the 1600s and very like taboo it was to have sex with a single woman or to have an illegitimate child. Like there's a lot of bad juju on that. Some of these men were charged with rape or less extreme forms of sexual coercion, but most were in court along with their wives for having had a child too soon after their marriage. What?
That's and it's brought up how marriage at that time, you didn't marry for love, you married to carry on the family name. So like the whole point is to have a kid.
Yes.
But you had a kid? Witch.
Yeah, and there was it just blew my mind, but it's just like you had a child too soon? Nope. I'm like, what is the correct time frame?
Exactly. Like how long afterwards?
Because I did say that out loud and my boyfriend did make a good point was that if you got married on a certain day and the baby was born like 2 months after, then that meant that you did have. He was like, that's probably what they meant. That's not how I read it.
No, that makes it seem like
yeah,
okay. If you have a baby within the first 9 months.
But it also made a point too that women were supposed to, I mean, please their man, and if they did not have sex on their wedding night,
I tabbed that.
It blew my mind.
Excuse you?
Blew my mind. And the men, I mean, they kind of just got, even though it says they got charged, they pretty much just got like a slap on the wrist.
They kind of got away with it. And there was a point brought up that's like, if a woman who was accused of being a witch tried to deny it, well, she's lying. because she's a witch.
Because she's a
But if
witch.
a man was accused and he like pleads guilty and he's like, yeah, no, I am. They're like, oh, he's just lying. It's fine. We can release him. He doesn't
He's
know what
okay.
he's doing. It's like, okay, so lying's fine for a man.
And also, if a woman was not charged with witchcraft and was released, she still could be shunned out of the colony
Yeah.
and have to still move
There's so
or
many.
be hung by her neighbors. Like
Yeah.
there
There were
wasn't.
so many. It's like, there's not enough evidence to charge you with witchcraft, but there is enough evidence to kick you out of this colony forever. It's like,
Yes.
what?
And there was
That's
there
punishment.
was one thing that I read that women were supposed to follow their husband was their master.
Yeah.
And if they thought anything otherwise, which they were not allowed to be independent or have a say in anything, and if they tried to rebel and talk not bad, but like against their master, which
I found the part.
okay.
If a man could not consummate his marriage, if his wife refused to lie with him, or if for any other reason he was unable to have sexual intercourse, then witchcraft was a likely cause. If not his partner's, then probably some other woman's.
I just
What?
I was baffled by that.
And it talked about, eventually in the biblical sense of why they thought of women as such naturally evil beings. And it brought up Adam and Eve and how Eve
Yeah.
was the one to ruin everything.
I will admit I did kind of fast forward through that part because
Yeah,
it
once it gets
really got
biblical and
into.
religious, I try to zone out. It's just instinct. But it brought up how, they always saw Eve as being bad, but whenever it came to Eve was a mother, everyone stopped listening, being like, what? No, blah blah blah.
I did tab. So there was one of the women, her name was Catherine Harrison. She was imprisoned for being a witch.
Mm.
During her imprisonment, her neighbors wounded and killed many of her horses and cattle and destroyed her crops. And after she returned from the Boston jail, they dragged her out of her house and hung her up until she was nearly dead, let her down, rolled her sometime in the snow, and at last buried her in it and left her there. I'm sorry. What?
Yeah, and she tried to sue, right?
The
For
court ignored her
damage.
petition for redress, and there's no evidence of any action taken against her attackers.
Yeah, and then nothing happened.
No.
You're like, oh, that's what you get for. It's like, what?
I
What?
was baffled. I did also like it towards the beginning. It broke up. Like it talks about. Let me see if I can find it. It starts off by talking like 1620 through 1646,
Mm-hmm.
and then it talks about 1647 to 1660. Like it breaks it up of kind of
Yeah.
what's happening, and everything's happening. Like it doesn't just talk about Salem, Massachusetts. It talks
Yeah.
about
All the colonies where
all
it
the
was
different
prevalent.
colonies. Yeah. And then it talks about how they were Puritans, but then when the Quakers came and were going door to
Damn
door,
Quakers.
when they were going door to door trying to like persuade people to become Quaker,
Right, to join
witches.
witches.
I was like, what?
You have a different thought than I do. Witch.
But yeah, this book breaks it down really well of like the different I don't want to say criteria for a witch, but like the different aspects of
How it,
why
yeah.
one was tried.
Because
Either
if you
based
ask a
on
kid
yeah,
right now and be like, oh, what does a witch look like? They're probably going to say
an
an
old lady.
old woman. Like
Yeah.
when the evil queen in Snow White transforms into the old lady. They probably think that. Like old hag
Yeah.
or, yeah, those commonly paired together. But it's like, okay, but who actually was being accused in that time?
And another big factor too is that if you were related to someone that was being accused, you also could be accused, especially if you were a female,
Yeah.
like the
Your
daughter,
mom,
the
daughter.
niece, the aunt, like the sister-in-law.
Like down to the sister-in-law.
They really got into it.
They
And
really did.
what's crazy to me is that the youngest person to be accused of witchcraft was 4 years old. 4.
4. This poor little girl is probably just like, I'm gonna play in the mud, and they're like, you're making potions.
Well, the reason that she was accused of being a witch was because she was mad that her mom was being like, she was being vocal about being pissed off at,
Her mom being taken away and like
which
not.
rightfully so.
Yeah, she doesn't understand. She's 4. She just sees her
4.
mom being taken away and she wants her mom.
I thought I had the tabs of the oldest person
Oh, that's right.
because the youngest was 4, but the oldest,
What the span was.
I don't
I
remember.
don't remember where
I should have
where
tabbed
it is
it.
in the book.
I'm sorry, everyone. Yeah.
You're
And
fine
then
with this.
there was only one male that was killed. All the other ones were let go. And his wife had been accused of witchcraft, and because he spoke up,
Yeah.
he also was accused of
He's
witchcraft.
also a witch.
And he was they put rocks on him. And like that's how he died.
Rock and pressed him, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just in the classic tale of no separation between religion and
Yeah.
government.
I think it was 80 something that the
I think so too. I'm trying to flip through.
Also, a witch could be identified by the presence of the devil's mark or the witch's teat on her body.
Oh, that's right. If she lets creatures suckle her energy or whatever.
Yeah. And so there was women that they like would search the bodies of the accused for the sign of the witch's familiarity with the devil.
Just wild.
It was.
From 4-year-old to wait, damn it.
Did it not?
I'm trying to find that was a different part of the sentence. Blah,
Yeah, I
blah,
think it was like
blah.
80 something.
I want to know.
And
it's hard because obviously a lot of the information about these witches, like sometimes these women, it's not noted how old they are when they're born. So not all of them can fall into these statistics because we just don't know how old they were or how they grew up.
Yeah. And also a big part of it too was they were charged sometimes with witchcraft once they came into their inheritance.
Right.
So if their father or siblings passed away and then they were gifted the inheritance, you have too much land or too much money, you're done.
Yeah.
It was wild.
Where the hell? Yeah, I can't find it.
I think it was 80 something.
I feel like it was 80 something.
Which back then, you might as well have been like 130.
I know. How'd you get that old, witch?
Right? I mean, this book pretty much says they could literally do nothing and be a witch. Yeah.
And I did where it was in her epilogue or her afterword where she's like, and today there's still people who like the witch of, their of racial problems and poverty lines and all of that, and be like, and those would be the people who would be accused today.
Oh, definitely.
And well, if you want to be angry at men, at white men, definitely give this a read. I just like the different perspective it gave because I love learning about witches, but it's really breaking it down.
Yeah.
But these were just women trying to live and be successful.
I had nothing wrong with this book. I loved this book. I just gave it a 4 out of 5 because some of it was a little too dry, and so I was like, meh.
It definitely, I don't want to say textbook, but it definitely reads like an academic journal.
It does.
So be prepared for that.
Yeah, but there were some chapters, like I said, when it got into about the actual people and their lives, I ate that up. I was loving that.
When they were describing the possessions.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was. Wild.
And then it goes into the girls who were accusers because they were possessed, and then a lot of times they were being possessed by a witch, a woman that they didn't even really know, like they didn't really interact with or knew at
Yeah,
all. I'm like,
which
that's interesting.
I thought was interesting
Yeah.
because obviously these weren't like huge colonies, not like the amount of people that we have today in
Yeah.
society. And so they had to have at least
Probably just like bigger main
heard.
towns.
There was
At
talk
least they
about,
knew them like by name. They knew their name.
yeah, which I think could also point to being influenced by someone else because if they didn't know that person, how would, I mean, it's a little sus,
Yeah.
not gonna lie. But I thoroughly, I mean, I did enjoy
I
this, but
really
I'm
liked
definitely
it.
I'm gonna keep it in my um
Yeah, I guess I'll read a little. Carol F. Carlsen was a professor of history at the University of Michigan. I don't know what other information it gives about her. But I know you're gonna be headed on to Goodreads if you want to see what else she's written, because I'm pretty sure her focus was like women's studies. Um,
um
Let me just see. Oh, also by, okay, obviously this was written in the early 80s, so the only other thing here is the Journal of Esther Edwards Burr, which I wonder who she is.
yeah, so Carol partners with um oh, well she writes about, yeah, Esther, and this journal is from 1754 to 57. And then she also has a book on the Salem witchcraft trials, A History in Documents.
Oh,
Um, that is, I, it's published by Oxford University. It says
oh, okay.
unknown binding, so there's not even like a.
It was probably a journal that got posted.
The Journal of Esther Edwards Burr is 318 pages.
Okay,
The daughter of Jonathan Edwards and mother of Aaron Burr, Mrs. Burr describes her experiences in colonial America.
interesting.
So this one's a bit, I mean, the journal has 25 ratings. The Salem Witchcraft Trials, A History and Documents has 2 ratings. And
They're
this,
very specific. Like people who are
yeah,
reading this aren't necessarily reading for fun to rate on the app, like
yeah.
it's for educational
This
purposes.
one is, da-da. So this one has a 3.81 star on Goodreads, 1,700 ratings, mainly 4 stars. Um, let's see. Someone said I couldn't finish this hellhole of a book,
Jesus, witch,
which not interesting as I thought it would have been.
witch.
A lot of them just give like 1 star. They don't.
They were probably, I imagine it's because they weren't expecting it to be so academic,
Yeah, it had some
academically written.
interesting ideas, but was written in the blandest way I can possibly imagine. Which,
Which,
um, yeah, I don't know. I like this book, but I also, I mean, you and I both like the history, and I mean, I've talked about that I do
yeah,
genealogy and stuff, and so I've always liked, I like taking a name and putting a story behind it because a name can just be a name, but once you put
right.
the story, they were like an actual real
You
person,
really get
and it
the,
makes them like they were
yeah,
alive.
it's more
They were,
impactful.
yeah, and they were actually someone. And
And
so
we're
I
used to
like,
reading through old documents and
yeah,
stuff. So, and plus, I mean, we've been through college, so we can read these journals.
barely. I barely. I tr I try not to remember that time in my life, but I
I imagine they're
also,
probably thinking of something a little more lighthearted and
yeah,
storytelly
than actual real
than
documents.
straight facts.
Well, and so even though this book is 370 pages, it's really only like 265,
Yeah,
including the epilogue, because part of that is just the notes of where Carol got
all
all
of
of
her
their,
notes and
yeah,
her research, and it's thoroughly researched.
it
So
is.
there is a lot of pages of her references.
I could
Um,
only imagine writing the the
uh,
note. Oh my Lord.
and
Well,
she gives a really nice appendix as
she does.
well. Maybe you
Yeah.
can read like a couple of the names of the accused witches.
So Elizabeth Blackleach was a Hartford woman who was accused of witchcraft along with her husband John during the 62 to 63 Hartford outbreak. She was never arrested. Her husband sued the accuser for molestation and defamation of character. Some of these people were accused of witchcraft multiple times. So Rachel Clinton divorced from her husband in 1681, which was highly like
Blasphemy.
pretty much. She was accused of witchcraft twice. One by her neighbors in Massachusetts, and again during the Salem outbreak. She was imprisoned in 1692, eventually tried and convicted, but freed after the governor issued his general pardon of the remaining Salem accused. Martha Corey, a Salem woman who we know was accused of witchcraft along with her husband Giles. Giles was pressed to death with rocks after he refused to enter a plea. Martha Corey and Alice Parker were tried, convicted, and executed. Yeah, a lot of these people, I mean, we know Dorcas Good, Sarah Good, those are ones. Let's see. Jane Hawkins was a Boston midwife and one of Anne Hutchinson's followers in the 1630s, never formally accused of witchcraft, but suspected of it and was banished from Massachusetts. So she wasn't even like rightfully.
Which is the wildest thing. They're like, we understand the jury found you not guilty, but you're guilty of something, so banished.
Margaret Jones was Massachusetts' first witch. She was executed in Boston in 1648. Her husband Thomas was suspected as well, probably because he was the husband, but he was never prosecuted. There were some people that were very prominent. Their husbands were very prominent. Some people were pregnant when they were accused of witchcraft, and that actually saved their lives. Because while they were waiting for the child to be born, there was the pardon that obviously saved them. Tituba was, I feel like, the only like.
Well, it was hard because she was a slave.
Yeah.
And servant. So, I mean, they didn't really keep records on them. So it's hard to say.
Yeah.
But
Some
she's
of
a well-known one.
Some of these women died in prison waiting. Yeah. Sarah Osborne, we know her, Salem Village resident and one of the first 3 women accused of witchcraft in the Salem outbreak. Rumor had it that she cohabitated with her much younger second husband before she married him, and that the couple conspired to deny the 2 sons of her former marriage their rightful inheritances. Mary Johnson was a servant who is most well known as one of the New England's first confessing witches. She was found guilty and hanged. So yeah, some of these women were hanged, some of them died in prison. Some of their loved ones were trying to get them out of prison.
Yeah.
And they had died while the person was in prison. There was one guy that he had tried to get his wife out of prison multiple times because he was ill and the farm was not doing well. And I'm pretty sure she got out after he died.
Once he was dead, yeah.
Which is so sad.
I know.
Catherine Harrison was living in Connecticut. She was newly widowed and financially independent woman. Was complained against by dozens of her neighbors, found guilty, but the authorities disagreed about her punishment, and she was just banished from the colony. A lot of them went to New York.
Yeah.
And were never heard from again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because even if you move, sometimes that reputation follows you. This word gets around, so I'm sure a lot of them changed their name.
Dorcas Good was the youngest person. She was 4 years old. She was the 4-year-old daughter of Salem witch Sarah Good, accused of witchcraft during the Salem outbreak. 4 years old. Shortly after her mother was named, she was imprisoned in the Boston jail for 7 or 8 months.
Poor little baby. That's
I
wild. They
cannot.
really did not hold back.
They really did not. Yeah, pretty wild. So it's pretty
So yeah, if
crazy.
you want a interesting nonfiction to read, I
Yes.
will suggest this, The Devil in the Shape of a Woman. If you want fiction books of a witch in puritanical times, I recommend Slewfoot
Oh,
by Brome. That
okay.
was a really good one. And The Year the Witching, I brought up who was by Alexis Henderson. That might be a kind of a series. Um, I guess
Okay.
the second one's going to be called The Dawn of the Coven. But they
Interesting.
both focus on a woman in puritanical times being forced to have to show up to church on time. Otherwise, what are you doing? And like, and men really trying to take over. And Slewfoot, her husband dies and she's in charge of the farm. They're going to take it away from her, but she's like, if I'm profitable this year and I make the farm happen all by myself, then I should be able to keep it. And they agree. And it's her maybe sort of consorting with a
Hmm.
devil-ish figure. Very nice. I really liked those two books.
Interesting. I'll have to check those out. I have not read those.
I like them.
I'll have to give them a girl. Yeah, I mean I really liked this book. I liked how it broke it up. It was very easy to keep track of everything.
Yeah.
I mean there is a lot of information and I did start tabbing and then I got to the point where I was like, I think I can remember if there's like I said, I remember that page about if they had a baby too soon in their marriage. I was just baffled by that. I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, a lot of that is like, this is what they did, and be like, but
Why?
why?
I was so confused by that. I was just like, I could only imagine what I mean, there would be so many witches in today's society.
Yeah,
If
you're
we
not
were go if we were
picking up
going
any
by the
switch.
standards of back then,
Yeah, it's like, oh, you're in your 30s, 40s, never married.
yeah,
Why?
yeah. You don't
Lit,
go to church.
lit.
Witch.
And they
You don't
like kept track and be like, oh, I haven't seen her at church the past couple of weeks.
yeah.
Lay off.
And if it just it also was crazy if she was independent. Like if she didn't conform to society's measures of, oh, my husband is my master, I must take care of the house. I
Yeah.
must not talk back to him. And if I do talk back to him, I'm a witch. Then it's the devil's work.
Like you can have no opinion and just do well enough to get by, but don't do anything significant.
Yeah.
Just
It
don't
just,
be significant.
I would be significant.
Be forgettable.
I would be a
Wild.
witch. I would be a witch.
I'd be a witch.
I would not last very long
I'd call myself a witch.
in society.
No.
I could not.
No.
So,
Well, that's this week's. I hope you liked our nonfiction choice. If you want to see what else we're reading, you can check out our Instagram at Baby Got Stacks Podcast. We have our schedule posted up on there and a link in the bio where you can see where else we're at. Check out our
we're
Goodreads.
going to be a little different since we're doing the double.
We're mixing it up a little bit next week.
Yeah.
Ashley will be reading Charming Your Dad.
Which I am a little scared.
There are pictures in the books, you guys.
There's pictures and I just want to give you just like a snippet. So the dedication says for my petty bitches. P.S. Ryan, I'm glad we never fucked. You made a crude song about my name, so I named a villain after you. Middle finger emoji.
Bless. Honestly, one of the best.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So you're reading that
Yes.
dark romance, probably, I imagine.
Yeah, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
I'm reading When the Reckoning Comes, a horror book by Latanya McQueen.
Okay.
So I'm pretty stoked about that. And we'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
Find a consensus. Yeah. Keep track of our Instagram. So we will post the following months towards the end of one month.
Yep.
Like and follow wherever you're listening to this podcast right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the whole spiel.
I think that's it. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's
I think
it.
that's good. Well, happy October 1st. We're pretty excited about this
Happy
month.
official spooky season.
Yeah, we're
Ooh.
getting all into the holidays. There's Thanksgiving. I'm pretty
Yeah,
excited about deviled
Thanksgiving,
eggs in the
Mr.
future.
Krabs.
Christmas.
Look
We're
how
gonna
this
get
happened so
crazy up in
fast.
here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Okay.
this was fun. We're both witches now, so
So don't forget, you're probably a witch.
you're probably a witch, and that's
Think about
okay.
it.
We love all people, including witches.
Including witches.
You're welcome here. Yeah.
We might banish you though.
Oh. Oh. Okay.
Bye guys.
Bye, guys.